Today, I'm gonna make cobbler with one of the most innovative Dutch ovens I've ever seen. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda out here on this, cool fall, autumn afternoon here. And one of the things that I miss from my childhood is a little Dutch oven cooking, and really did it mostly in Boy Scouts. And God bless Dennis Hannon, the scoutmaster from my youth, because he would bring a Dutch oven on all the cookouts and he would make us some cobbler. And I don't know who invented this recipe, someone more brilliant than I back in the day, but it's like one of the easiest things to do. I haven't made it since I was a kid, but there's nothing better than 40 scouts out in the middle of nowhere and on one of those cool fall afternoons or evenings, or even during one of those winter campouts, man, getting a little scoop of some blueberry or strawberry or cherry cobbler, man, that would just warm you up. It would make you feel like you are back at home, back out of the wilderness. I loved it. It seems so easy to make and I always wanted to do it, but I haven't had a Dutch oven until now. But this one is pretty unique. So before we start cooking in it, I want to give you a little tour. All right, so here's the Dutch oven, and what is brilliant about this is, first of all, it's not that expensive. This one was actually pretty cheap, way cheaper than I expected. It's pretty big, you can see my hand here, but it's got a skillet pan for the lid. Kind of nests in there like that too, so I could presumably bake and cook in this, but that's really what I wanted because I didn't want to carry a Dutch oven and other cookware, but now I could cook in both of these, so I have like two skillets, make some eggs, bacon or something, put beans in that one, so now I've got two cooking surfaces, but I can close them up just like this and turn them into an oven. Now, probably the one big drawback here is that it doesn't have the loop here, so you can't use one of your hooks to kind of rotate this around, but that's not that big of a drawback. You can see the handles here are pretty big. If you've got hot pads, you presumably grab them on the sides. I love this big little handle here. It makes it easy to carry, whether they're like this or nested upside down. But the other thing that I like about this is that it's pre-seasoned, and so what that means is the early games don't matter, and it's really about trying out the players. I'm only kidding. That's a different preseason. Preseason here means they have oiled it up, maybe baked it into the cast iron. This thing's pretty heavy, but what I love about it is it's not too heavy, it's not too big. I get really two cooking surfaces in one, and so what I'm going to do is really just use this as like a Dutch oven today, with this being the top. But like I said, you can cook everything else in here too, like in your pan. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm going to just wipe it down, make sure we get all the new stuff off of it. But once it's wiped down, we're going to start getting ready on, I think, kind of the simplest blue collar cobbler hack I've ever seen. All right, so while I've got my coals lighting up here, I thought I would show you what I'm going to be using and do a little bit of the prep here. So one of the things that can put on top is some granulated brown sugar. I don't know that we always did that, but it was pretty decadent when we did, and this guy likes to live a little decadently. I've got some regular butter here. This is unsalted, so we haven't assaulted it yet. Now it's assaulted. And I just have some cans of sliced peaches here. Now, I've seen some people say you want to use pie filling fruit, and I think you can, and that's where you can eliminate this guy. But because the pie filling has so much liquid with it, generally what happens is that is what mixes with the cake mix and then becomes kind of that cake batter crust on the top. But I like using just regular fruit. I do dump it in there with some of the juice in there and everything else, but I love going heavy on the fruit. I mean, that's the healthy part. That's what makes it feel guilt-free. It's just really fruit, and then cake mix and sugar and lots of butter and pop. The other thing that you want here is super moist cake mix. Now, I don't know that it needs to be moist, but just a box of cake mix, a couple bucks here. This is yellow cake mix, and I will mix it with this Sprite and create a little bit of a batter, which I will top the fruit with. Well, like I said, some people just dump this on top, and if you have a lot of that moisture from the pie filling, I think that will merge with this. But mixing it with something like Sprite, one, it's really sweet, but then it just gives me a little more consistency. The last thing you want to do is be enjoying your cobbler and get like uncooked powdery cake mix in your mouth. That's just gross. All right, so you'll need all the tools that you need for that. I've got a bowl and a spoon here. We're just gonna open this guy up, pull out the bag of cake mix. That's what it looks like, and dump it in the bowl. Glad I'm doing this outside. All right, then I'll just dump this into the bowl right there. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to mix it. Obviously, if you were doing this with like a cake, I think it's just water, but I'm gonna mix it with some Sprite and stir it up until we get that dough. Let's try that. I'm just gonna pour some in. It's gonna take a decent amount of this. but not obviously the whole 2 liters. And I'm just gonna start mixing it up. Obviously easier with power tools on this guy, but didn't even use 1/8 of it there. Oh, and it does bubble up. That fizzy drink. Most of those bubbles are starting to go away now that I'm getting it mixed in here. And you can see what this looks like. And really, it doesn't need to be really runny. Kind of thick is fine. I'm just gonna kind of spread it on top. What I'm really just trying to do is get rid of any of those clumps of dry cake mix. You just, like I said, don't want that in there. Even though it's gonna bake and kind of render those down a little bit, it's certainly easier to get rid of those beforehand. And if you want it a little thinner, you can certainly do that. This thing is gonna cook for probably like 40-50 minutes potentially, so it's a little thick. I'm just gonna throw another splash in there, drink a splash myself, and get all the dried cake mixed in. All right, now we can get everything else into the Dutch oven and start making this thing. All right, I've got some pretty good coals here, so I'm just gonna put those down, spread a few of them out. I don't have any fancy tools for this. We do what we do out here in the wilderness. We use sticks, lots of sticks. Push some of these coals out to the side because I'm gonna lift those up and put them on to the top, but I don't want this thing too hot, but just kind of like light baking hot, because it's more about time than it is just about the hot heat. Gonna throw on the bottom of the Dutch oven there. And now the first thing I'm gonna do is cover the whole thing with some butter. Some butter on the bottom here. Keep stuff from sticking as much as possible. And you know what? Butter is delicious. It's delicious. Tastes good. I rub it all over myself and then I suntan with it. So I got a few big pats of butter in there. Sucker's hot. It's actually probably a little hotter than I would like. I always feel like the temptation with fire is more is better, but in this case, you don't want too much. And now what we're gonna do here, start opening cans of peaches, and I'm just gonna lay them down on the bottom. I don't mind going overboard with fruit because, you know, fruit's delicious. All right, so I got my butter evenly laid out there. I'm gonna start just pouring the fruit here in the bottom. And you know what? Even if you don't add any sweetness, cooked fruit is always delicious, so I don't mind going a little heavy on the fruit. Anyway, and now I'm just gonna start putting on this cake mix batter. Try to get it all over the top as much as I can. When it comes out a little lumpy like this, you just kind of spread it out as best you can. I'll spread it out with the spoon a little bit too. The beautiful thing about Cobbler cooking outside is that nothing has to be perfect. The imperfection is what kind of gives it that personality. And I will also say, my father always said, your life's best memories are always the worst disasters. You don't remember the good stuff. You remember the crazy, funny, bad stuff. Okay, so now we got all this stuff on here. And now I'm gonna take the brown sugar, put a nice little dusting of this on top. Make sure it's kind of broken up to avoid too big of clumps. But like I said, the irregularity is what makes it man-made. I don't really remember how much of this we put on there, but Tim Allen always said more is better. Oh. I hate just making a small cobbler like this just for myself, but you know what? That's what we gotta do. If I had any friends, they'd all be invited over. And if you're watching this, come on by. All right, so to spread out here as much as I can. Yeah, I'm gonna use the other half of this stick of butter here to just kind of put on top, melt into all this. It's really a very keto-friendly health food. Dr. Nick says this is your window to weight gain. You know what? If you're in a survival situation, we don't fuss about the details. So now I got that going. I'm gonna just go ahead and throw the skillet on, i.e. the lid. What I'm going to do here is just take some of these other coals, I'm going to throw them on top, put some of that heat on the top to cook that top portion, not just let it rise from the bottom. Usually you even want more heat on the top because heat rises and coals on top of things are less effective cooking below them. So you can actually go a little hotter up here if you want. All right, now I'm just going to let that cook for a while and I'll check on its progress in, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. I feel like this waiting around part is the hardest part. I'm gonna actually let it cook for 20 minutes before I take a peek. All right, it's been exactly 20 minutes now. I've got a hot pad here. I'm going to see if I can just kind of twist this a little bit here. Twist this so that I can get the handle, and hopefully I'm strong enough to get this lid off and hold it up without corrupting and dropping stuff in there. We'll see. I actually tried blowing off some of the extra ash on the top before I open this up so it doesn't fall inside. Oh my gosh, this thing looks like a freaking cake in there. I mean, I put in a little too much of that batter, but you know what? I guess too much is better than too little. I'm gonna just close this up here again. I'm not gonna worry too much about the heat. It looks like it's doing just fine, but I do want that cake to get, you know, a little more crispy, drier even. I can't believe it's that high. I shouldn't have put in so much stuff, but I'm gonna kind of load up the coals on top here and really try to drive some of that heat down onto that cake to really bake that good. And then I'm just gonna check it again in like probably 15 minutes. I think we're getting pretty close to this being done. All right, as you can see, I stacked a bunch of coals on the top because I really wanted to keep cooking it from the top down there. And I only set the timer for 15 additional minutes because I thought we were getting pretty close. So I'm just going to blow off some of the ash here so I don't get it in there. But even if we get a little ash in there, that's okay. It won't kill us. And then we'll check it out. All right, let's take a little peek here. See what we got. All right, we definitely got this top crusting over a little bit here. Let's sit right in the middle where that heat was. I'm going to tell you right now, this thing is driving me crazy because it is smelling crazy good. You know what? I'm just going to close this up for another minute, not to necessarily cook it anymore. I don't think it necessarily needs that, but I've got to go get a bowl and a spoon and be able to scoop some of this out into something with. All right, so I finally got my bowl here. I'm just going to go ahead and take some extra coals off there. Try not to get too much in there. I will also say the seal around the skillet and the pot is really good. I was watching it just sitting out here enjoying the weather, and I could see the steam escaping, but not a lot of steam. So it's got a pretty nice seal. Kind of sits, nests in there nicely. Now I thought we'd scoop a little out, see what we got here. I'm just gonna go here on the side. There's a lot of cake. And it looks way more like cake to me than kind of that crust on top that I remember. Almost like a pie crust filling. I know some people actually use pie crusts in these. Man, they just look awesome, but you know, we won't know until we actually try it for ourselves. All right, here we go. All right, this is hot. Holy smokes. It's actually pretty warm out here and you can see that steam coming off there. So I just want to give you a look of what I've scooped in there. It definitely looks like cake over here. Obviously there's some really kind of toasted parts there. The peaches look soft, and so I'm gonna grab a little bit of the cake, a little bit of that peach in there, and just try it out. That's terrible. That's horrible. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't really taste like brown sugar crust as much as it does. Look at this. I've got bees. That's how sweet and delicious this is. I got bees. You know what that means. Sweet and delicious. It is sweet and delicious. It definitely tastes more like cake, and it's sweet. Maybe because of that Sprite that I use, lemon lime soda for you that like generic stuff. But the peaches are delicious. Man, it is decadent. I think the thing that frustrates me most about this, how much time I've spent in a kitchen following a recipe with actual cooking machines, and I have screwed stuff up, and something like this, you're just pouring it into a Dutch oven and letting it cook on its own for a while, and then it comes out with something that's delicious and stupid easy to make. That's what's probably the most frustrating thing to me. But man, this makes a lot of stuff. So if you're looking for a good way to make a delicious dessert that feeds a lot of people, that's stupid easy and could be fun for the family, I would definitely try a cobbler. You can definitely try different recipes, different fruits, try that pie filling, try different cake mixes, try pouring it on top without mixing it up into a batter first. You do you, and call me because I want to taste test it. Oh yeah, it's so good, but I don't really feel like it has that much sugar. I don't really feel like it's that bad of a dessert. I'm not saying it's good for you, but it just tastes good. But good for you, it doesn't really taste very good, and this tastes pretty damn good. So if you want to make this too, I'll put links to everything that I showed you, including this incredibly cool Dutch oven skillet combo thing. It worked pretty damn well. Links are in the description. Peter Von Panda, out.